In the year 2000, Enron was named America's most innovative company for the sixth year in a row. 6 years in a row, let that sink in. Their stock was flying, their executives were on magazine covers. Harvard Business School Harvard was teaching students to be more like Enron, more like them. Then in exactly 24 days, it was all gone. $74 billion in shareholder value, just erased like it never existed. 20,000 jobs, gone, people who woke up Monday morning thinking they had a future and by Friday they didn't. And the retirement savings? God, the retirement savings, thousands of ordinary, hardworking Americans who trusted these men with everything they had saved, every birthday they worked through, every vacation they skipped, every sacrifice they made for 30 years, gone. But here's the question that nobody ever really asks. How did the smartest analysts on Wall Street miss it? How did the most respected auditors in the world miss it? How did the United States government, with all its power and all its resources, miss it? Here's the honest answer, and it's uncomfortable. They didn't miss it because they were stupid. These were brilliant people, the best in the world at what they did. They missed it because they wanted to believe. They needed to believe, because believing felt so much better than asking the question that would blow the whole thing up. And here's the part that should genuinely frighten you. If you were alive in 2000 with a retirement account and a television, you would have believed it too. I would have. We all would have. That's not an insult, that's just the truth. Enron started in 1985 as a completely boring natural gas pipeline company in Houston, Texas. Nobody paid attention to them, nobody wrote articles about them, there was nothing to write about. But then they hired a man named Jeffrey Skilling, a McKinsey consultant, cold, precise, and brilliant in a way that made people around him feel slightly stupid. And he walks in with one idea, one single accounting trick, that transforms a forgettable pipeline company into the seventh largest corporation in the entire United States of America. That trick is where everything begins, and once you understand it, you will never look at a balance sheet the same way again. Skilling's idea is called mark-to-market accounting, and on the surface, it sounds almost reasonable. Normally, a company records revenue when it actually receives money. You sell something, cash comes in, you write it down, that's it. Simple, clean, honest. Mark-to-market says, why wait for the cash? If you sign a 20-year energy contract today, you estimate what that contract will be worth over 20 years and you book all of that projected profit right now. Today, this quarter, before a single dollar has actually arrived. Here's how to really feel what that means. Imagine you sign a lease to rent your apartment for 20 years. And on the very first day, you walk to the bank and deposit all 20 years of rent, money that hasn't been paid yet, money that might never be paid, and you call yourself a millionaire. The money isn't real yet, it's a projection, it's a hope, it's a number somebody typed into a spreadsheet, but it's on the books, and once it's on the books, something strange happens, people stop questioning it. The SEC approved this for Enron in 1992. Legally, officially, stamped and signed. And what Skilling understood more clearly than anyone else in that room is that once a number is written down in an official document, human nature takes over. Nobody wants to be the person who raises their hand and says they don't understand. Nobody wants to look unsophisticated. Nobody wants to slow the train down. So the numbers got written down, and then they got bigger, and then bigger again. Enron's reported revenues go from $13 billion in 1996 to $111 billion by the year 2000. $111 billion, more than Boeing, more than Disney, more than Nike, combined. The stock climbs from $20 a share to $90 a share. Employees, regular, everyday people who worked in those offices, who brought lunch from home, who coached their kids' little league teams on weekends, they start pouring their entire retirement savings into Enron stock. Every dollar they had, because why wouldn't you? Your company is the most successful company in America. Your CEO is on the cover of Fortune magazine. Harvard is writing case studies about you. You would have done it too. But inside that glass tower in Houston, the truth was something else entirely. The profits were not real. The contracts were actually losing money. The value they had booked up front was fiction, numbers pulled from models built to say whatever Skilling needed them to say. And every single quarter they needed to show growth. More than last quarter, always more, because the moment the growth stopped, the whole illusion collapsed. So they started hiding the losses. This is where a man named Andrew Fastow enters the story. Fastow is Enron's chief financial officer, and he is the architect of what comes next, the engineer of the whole rotten structure. He figures out a way to take hundreds of millions of dollars in losses and make them disappear. Not fix them, not pay them off, just make them vanish off Enron's books into the shadows where no investor would ever find them. His method is something called special purpose entities, shell companies, fake subsidiaries created for one single purpose, to absorb Enron's bad debt so it never shows up on any official document. He gives them names: Raptor, Condor, LJM, names that sound clinical and distant, like they have nothing to do with real people's money. They look independent on paper, completely separate from Enron, but Fastow himself is secretly running them. And while he's doing it, while he's hiding the losses of the company he's supposed to be protecting, he is personally collecting $30 million in fees. $30 million from the company he worked for, from the employees who trusted him. The board of directors found out. They found out about the conflict of interest. They found out about the self-dealing. They knew. And they voted to waive Enron's own ethics policy so he could keep going. Because the stock was up. And when the stock is up, nobody in that room wants to be the one who kills the party. And then there is Ken Lay. The founder, the face of the whole thing, the man who shook hands with presidents, who built Enron from a nothing company in Texas into something the whole country admired, a man who talked about integrity in almost every speech he ever gave. Ken Lay knows the numbers are falling apart, he knows what's coming, and so he starts quietly selling his own stock. Millions and millions of dollars worth, slipping out the side door while nobody's watching. At the same time, he gets on company calls with his employees, the people who believed in him, the people whose entire financial futures were tied to his words, and he tells them out loud on the record that Enron's stock is a buy, that the company is strong, that the future is bright. They believe him. Why wouldn't they? He's Ken Lay. They buy more stock. But there was one person in that company who saw through all of it. Her name is Sharon Watkins. She's a vice president at Enron, 16 years in finance, smart enough to understand exactly what the numbers actually meant, and courageous enough to do something that almost nobody in that building was willing to do. In August of 2001, she sits down and writes a memo directly to Ken Lay, 7 pages, and she doesn't soften it. She doesn't bury it in corporate language or hedge it with qualifications. She writes almost word for word, "I am incredibly nervous that we will implode in a wave of accounting scandals. I want you to stop for a second and really feel what it takes to write those words." Sharon Watkins is not somebody with nothing to lose. She has a career she spent 16 years building. She has a salary. She has a reputation inside a company that the entire city of Houston worships. She has colleagues and friends and a life inside those walls. Writing that memo means risking every single bit of it. It means being the person who broke the spell, the person who said the thing nobody was allowed to say. She said later that she fully expected to be fired within the week. She wrote it anyway. She puts it in an envelope. She walks down the hallway. She goes to Ken Lay's office and she hands it to him personally, looks him in the eye. Ken Lay takes the envelope, and then he passes it to Enron's own lawyers, the lawyers Enron is paying $52 million a year, and asks them to review it. The lawyers come back and say there's no problem. Watkins gets quietly reassigned to a smaller office with less responsibility. The memo gets buried, and the machine keeps running, grinding forward, chewing through whatever time it had left. Then, 6 weeks later, Jeffrey Skilling, who had been CEO for less than a year, suddenly resigns. He says it's for personal reasons. Nobody believes him, but nobody says so out loud. The stock begins to slide. Then, in October of 2001, Enron announces a $618 million quarterly loss and a $1.2 billion reduction in shareholder equity. The SEC opens a formal investigation. And now it all comes apart at once. The shell companies get exposed, the fake projected profits evaporate, The real debt surfaces billions of dollars that had been buried, hidden, erased from every document an investor ever saw. It comes flooding back all at once. The stock hits 26 cents. Not $26, 26 cents. A woman named Linda Berriman had worked at Enron for 16 years. She was 61 years old. She had $700,000 saved in her retirement account, every dollar she had set aside for the last chapter of her life. Her security, her future, the proof that all those years of work had meant something. Her shares were locked, she couldn't sell, she could only watch. She watched the number go from $700,000 to almost nothing. Nobody called her. Nobody sent a letter. The company just stopped existing, and she was left sitting there with 16 years of her life reduced to a number that wouldn't cover a month of groceries. In December of 2001, Enron files for bankruptcy, the largest corporate bankruptcy in American history at that point. The fraud was so deeply rotten that it destroyed the very people who were supposed to be watching for it. The next company that ran this exact playbook was Lehman Brothers. And what happened there was 10 times more violent, $600 billion gone in a single weekend. Governments in emergency meetings, global markets in freefall, ordinary people on the other side of the world losing their homes because of decisions made in a boardroom they'd never heard of. But that is a story for another time.